Subcommittee on Military Construction and Veterans Affairs and related agencies will come to order. Good evening, welcome to the Subcommittee on Markup for the fiscal year 2025 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and related agencies appropriations bill. Welcome, Chairman Cole. We hope Ms. Laura is going to be able to join us, and I'm sure glad to see my friend and colleague, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, with us today. I'm proud to present the fiscal year 2025 Military Construction and Veterans Affairs and related agencies appropriations bill. The bill fully funds veterans' health care and benefits and other services and programs that support. Oh, good, we've got more people here. Other programs for the veterans, for our America's veterans. As always, we kept our promise to those who put our nation first. The bill also provides $18 billion for military construction and family housing and is $412 million above the President's budget for the fiscal year 2025 for defense. The investment in this bill directly support our national defense or making critical investments at home and abroad. Key investments include $1.1 billion for 11 barracks and additional funding for future barracks, $2 billion for military family housing. This thing doesn't turn right. $1 billion for investment in the Pacific, including robust funding for Guam and for dedicated funding for Indo-PACOM. In closing, I'd like to thank the subcommittee members. Many of you participated in this process, and your input was made this a better bill. To my ranking member, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, a great partner, I appreciate you and thank you for your hard work. Finally, I would like to thank Chairman Cole and Ranking Member DeLauro for their support and assistance to the subcommittee. I will now recognize Ms. Wasserman Schultz for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you yielding. I wanted to say how much I appreciate that this subcommittee has had a long-standing tradition of bipartisanship. I have often said that you can really switch between Judge Carter and myself as to who is the chair or ranking member, and you'll basically see this much the same bill. We don't agree on everything, but we agree on the important priorities for the quality of life for our military and caring for our veterans. With that said, I had hoped that last year's extremely partisan House bill would be an anomaly, that reaching an agreement in conference for fiscal year 2024 would set us on a path for a more agreeable process this year. Unfortunately, that does not appear to be the case, and thus I sadly cannot support this bill. This bill is built on a framework that walks away from the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act again. Last year, the ink was barely dry on the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and Republicans essentially tore up the agreement, marking up bills at dramatically lower levels, to the point that even the Republican majority couldn't get them off the floor. And somehow, we find ourselves in the same position with 302B allocations released last week that once again break the bipartisan FRA agreement, which was the basis for the bills we passed just a couple of months ago. While the FY25 Milcon VA bill doesn't face cuts as dramatic as other bills, veterans and service members and their families rely on programs throughout the federal government. Let's remember, the Fiscal Responsibility Act already only allows for a 1% increase this year, and Republicans are insisting on even more dramatic cuts. They are leaving $75 billion on the table that we should be using for non-defense discretionary programs, consistent with the 1% increase over last year's agreement. On the military construction side, this bill cuts funding for service members and their families, cuts funding for service members and their families by $718 million compared to the enacted level, compared to current services. We have a recruitment and retention problem. We hear that time and again in the hearings that we have leading up to our markups. And Republicans are cutting funding for military construction. We have a major quality of life problem, which we hear repeatedly in our hearings leading up to our markups. And this is a problem for our service members and their families, and Republicans are cutting funding for military construction. We are in a climate crisis, and Republicans are cutting dedicated funding for resiliency. Look no further than Guam. After Typhoon Mawar ripped through the island, there is over $49 billion in military construction needed to fix and rebuild their facilities, and that is only a single storm, and will take the services years to recover from. And in Guam, many of us know, because both Judge Carter and I have been there, as have others, that everything that Guam needs has to be brought in from somewhere else, because Guam is an island, and they have not only labor shortages, but they have real challenges bringing in the resources that they need to address the impact of Typhoon Mawar. Typhoon Mawar shows why resiliency dollars now are a good investment to prevent much more costly repairs and rebuilding in the future. We need to be prioritizing hardening our infrastructure to better protect our investments from the more frequent and dangerous natural events. While this bill does do some good things, and I appreciate Chairman Carter including increased funding for the oversight of family housing and dedicated funding for PFAS remediation and cleanup, there is more that we need to do for our service members and their families, and that starts with building on current services, not cutting back. On the VA side, this bill includes a plethora of harmful poison pill riders. Why we have to go through this song and dance again when they were rejected in conference last year is stunning to me. This bill once again prohibits the VA from implementing its its final rule to provide abortions and abortion counseling. I will say, though, that VA implemented its final rule in March, but the message that Republicans are sending is clear. Republicans want to limit women's access to abortions. Republicans think that the government is the entity that should decide about women's health care choices, not women themselves. Never mind if an abortion is in the best medical interest of the veteran. Republicans think you have to be dying in order to get one. They want the government making personal medical decisions for veterans, not their doctor or in conjunction with the veteran themselves. This bill undermines VA's ability to report a beneficiary to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System to keep guns out of the hands of those who are prohibited under federal law from purchasing or possessing firearms. It is prohibiting VA from following the law that is intended to protect veterans. Furthermore, this bill seeks to disenfranchise veterans by seeking to eliminate the pride flag, prohibiting gender-affirming care procedures or hormone therapies, allowing a license to discriminate against LGBTQI+ people, prohibiting diversity, equity, and inclusion training, and cutting funding for the Office of Resolution Management, Diversity, and Inclusion. These culture war riders were rejected in conference negotiations last year, and we know that they will be rejected again this year in order for us to reach a final agreement. So I cannot in good conscience support this bill, and it saddens me. The subcommittee has a long-standing tradition of bipartisanship, and I truly value my friendship with Chairman Carter. I hope that we can work together in good faith going forward to take care of our veterans, service members, and their families in the way that they deserve. This bill, sadly, does not achieve that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield. But before I yield back, I do want to ask all of you to join me in thanking Jenny Nuschler, who has been our remarkable clerk on the minority side, on the Democratic side, for a number of years, and before that spent years on this committee as a staffer as well. She is leaving for greener pastures, as they say, and I'll talk a little bit about her in full committee at our markup, but I want to thank Jenny for all the incredible work that she's provided to all of our members over many years. Thank you so much. And now I yield back.
I hope you're going far, far away.
Now I'll recognize the distinguished chairman of the subcommittee, of the full committee, Mr. Cole, for his remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Carter, and I thank thanks as well, obviously, to Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, Ranking Member DeLauro, and to all the members of the subcommittee for being here today. Today's measure is the first appropriations bill we'll consider for fiscal year 2025. I echo my good friend Judge Carter's comments about this bill. It honors our commitment to those who've worn America's uniform and supports our military and their loved ones. I also note you come in above the President's recommended number, which I appreciate greatly. By providing critical funding for military bases and improving housing for our troops and their families, we are ensuring that our national defense needs are met, both at home and abroad. We're also upholding our pledge to our veterans. This bill fully funds health care and benefits for those who've honorably served. They honored their oath to us, and now a grateful nation is keeping our promise to them. All these important priorities are filled while remaining true to the budgetary levels outlined in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which is the law of the land. We're demonstrating America's obligation to our heroes, defense, and the national security effectively and responsibly. I want to thank Chairman Carter, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, and the majority and minority staffs for their hard work, and I look forward to consideration of this bill today. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, thank you. Okay. Not a problem. I'm in good company here, so that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for yielding. And let me just take a moment to join my colleague, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, in singing the praises of Jenny Nuschler, who is a really pretty extraordinary young woman, juggling a newborn and now a toddler, and trying to live up to all of the obligations of serving as the staff to the ranking member here, and before that as working with the chair. And she brings her knowledge, her passion, and a commitment to making sure that with this subcommittee we're carrying out its mission and making sure we are addressing the needs of American servicemen and women, and it does it with a wonderful smile and a great personality. Thanks so much, Jenny. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I thank you again for yielding. This is the first subcommittee markup for fiscal year 2025. I want to say congratulations to our full committee chair and my friend, Chairman Cole, for the first markup under your leadership. Now let me move on from there. Quite frankly, despite a new chair, I think I'm experiencing deja vu all over again as we head down an already well-trodden path towards chaos, division, and shutdown threats. Like last year, we are beginning this process with top-line funding levels that fall short of what the American people need and are short of what both parties have agreed to. 1 year ago, a majority of the majority on this subcommittee and over 3/4 of the majority on the full committee voted for a 1% increase for defense and non-defense in 2025 in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. In full disclosure, I did not, but it became the law of the land, and we are living under that framework. Then, just 2 months ago, we voted on 2 bills to fund the government for fiscal year 2024, which provided a greater level of domestic funding than was previously agreed to. Every single member of this subcommittee voted in support of at least one of them. Those bills established our baseline for the 1% increase called for in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. That is what has to happen here. It was agreed to. We should be marking up to that 1% increase, which is the law. Instead, the chair's allocations leave on the table at least $75 billion in public investments for American families. And once again, the majority appears to be loading up appropriations bills with harmful policies that have little to do with responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars, but instead divide the country, divide the Congress, and harm Americans, and will go nowhere, as we saw experienced in 2024. Like last year, final 2025 spending bills will be the product of negotiations between Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate. And we can either do that now, or we can squander another summer on bills that will never see the light of day. The bill before this subcommittee today would hurt our veterans and military readiness, worsen the quality of life for service members and their families. It leaves our military construction, service members, veterans, and their families vulnerable to the impact of climate change and worsening natural disasters. It harms women and moves us closer to a national ban on abortion. This bill disarms our military in the face of the climate crisis. It fails to include any dedicated funding for resilience projects to help protect our bases and installations from rising sea levels and extreme weather. Don't take my word for it. Just don't take my word for it. Look at the bill. Last year, we provided $30 million in targeted funding to improve the resiliency of our military installations against sea level rise, against flooding, and extreme weather events to improve military readiness and to protect our service members. This year's bill provides nothing. And the bill walks back investments made in natural disaster recovery funds to help our military recover from ever worsening disasters. Last year's bill provided $150 million to help Tyndall Air Force Base build back from Hurricane Michael. This year's bill cuts still needed investment by $50 million, meaning it will take much longer to build back. Failing to allow our military to confront the threats posed by rapidly changing climate puts our service members in harm's way, hurts America's military readiness, and our national security. Military leaders, including under former President Trump, have warned of the dangers that climate change poses to our military. Former Secretary Mattis warned that climate change threatened American interests and the Department of Defense's assets around the world, and said climate change is, and I quote, a challenge that requires a broader whole-of-government response, end quote. This bill endangers veterans and recklessly undermines the ability to keep guns out of the hands of those prohibited under federal law from purchasing or possessing firearms, and I might add, because of the potential that they might harm themselves or others. The VA is now not in compliance with federal law, which has put in place decades ago to protect people from harming themselves and others. And finally, this bill is a direct attack on women veterans, who are the fastest growing demographic served by the Department of Veterans Affairs, tripling from 160,000 in 2001 to more than 600,000 last year, with a policy rider that limits abortion access and prohibits abortion counseling. The women who volunteered to serve and defend our nation, to protect our country's most sacrosanct rights and freedoms, should not come home to find that their medical care and their family planning decisions being made by anyone other than themselves, their families, and their doctors. This is just one more way in which Republicans are prioritizing pushing our country towards a national abortion ban above everything else. We will defeat every one of your anti-choice riders, just as we did last year. The majority may want to suggest that they are supporting our veterans' needs, but we all know that this bill alone does not contain all the programs the most vulnerable veterans depend on. The cuts the majority is seeking across the other funding bills will harm and neglect many of the heroes who bravely defended this nation. At least 1.2 million veterans rely on food stamps for nutrition assistance. Tens of thousands of veterans rely on housing vouchers. Thousands of veterans utilize job training programs to reenter civilian life. All of these programs and many others may face severe cuts if we move forward with the funding levels proposed by the majority. So do not tell me that Republicans are fully funding veterans programs. The larger Republican agenda does nothing to protect veterans from their proposed cuts. I cannot support this bill, and I hope Republicans will consider their strategy. Join us at the table to support our veterans, our service members, and to support workers and families. And above all, it is time to govern. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. DeLauro. Any other members want to make opening statements? Good. Just a little, so-
He says warmly.
Seeing no amendments are going to be set at this level, we will not, I'll now ask Mr. Valdeo if he has a motion he'd like to make.
I move the bill be favorably reported to the full committee.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. It appears the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Before we quit and go vote, I want to take a personal privilege here for a minute. I want to thank Chairman Cole, my staff, Ms. DeLauro, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, for taking into consideration time-wise on our committee that my wife just went through a medical procedure back home, and I need to get back as soon as possible. And so they've done everything to assist me in that, and she's doing pretty good. She's not in a very good mood, but because it hurts, but she's getting. They tell us she'll be better on Wednesday. So, but anyway, thank you all for the consideration of that. I really truly appreciate it. And I just want everybody to know that's what makes appropriators appropriators. We're the best. We're the best. We put aside partisan, especially personal friendships. And I thank you for all of your personal friendships. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the bill and report without objection, so ordered. Copies of the bill and report with the technical and confirming changes will be delivered to all full committee members' offices as soon as possible. Thank you very much to everyone, and that concludes the markup for today. The committee stands adjourned.